Well, good evening and welcome everybody to the Autonomous Collective. We're a ragtag group of people who have no more interest than peace, love, and harmony come to the world immediately. I'd like to introduce Ann Lee, a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Pulse. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Evening, Ann. Hello, Ann. Oh, we don't have your mic on.
You turned it off. Well, the weather's changed anyway.
Strong wind.
Raining.
Ben, how you been? Oh, we losing you? Am I losing you? Maybe it's my network. Oh,
you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Oh.
What are we eating tonight?
Well, I'll be cook this evening again. I thought we might focus on the Hasbara, the ongoing bombardment of Gaza by the Israelis. Doesn't really make one very hungry, but I thought I might talk a little bit about the disappearing or othering of Palestinian national dishes or traditional Arab dishes being taken on by Israelis as essentially Israeli. So I'll be making two dishes, one a cucumber tomato salad. It's abroad, it's called Israeli salad. You can come across it in various names, but Israeli salad is a popular one. They don't paper over it in Israel. The Arabic name is salata falaiya, which is farmer salad, and in Hebrew they call it salat Arabi or Arab salad. It was popular with the kibbutzniks. They learned it from the Palestinian farmers that they lived next to and along with. It is sometimes called Israeli salad. That's one dish we'll be making, and then another one we'll be making is the other national dish of Israel, which has been co-opted from the Palestinians, which is hummus. But this is a hummus masbaha, which is in Arabic, it's swimming. I guess it's just derived from the word swimming, which is a sauce of tahini, so standard tahini sauce with garlic, lemon, cumin. What else do we have here? Maybe put some coriander, or as Lane appreciates, cilantro. And then I'll be cooking hummus or chickpeas in the pressure cooker to save time and energy. And when you are dealing with an occupation or are low on funds. You need to utilize as little energy as possible. Pressure cooking, particularly beans, cuts down your cooking time by a third to a third. So we're making chickpeas swimming in tahini sauce, or hummus masbah. So I could also call it clumpy hummus if you're too lazy to use or don't have what are they called? Kitchen machines. Losing my English. Food processor. You can just take a bean masher and make lumpy hummus. It's quite nice. And this one will be toasting some cumin seeds and coriander and with pine nuts. And we make a kind of dressing with pickles, pickled chili. These are some nice roasted. This might be from Ukraine. I didn't make these, but they're grilled pickled chilies. Make a nice spicy dressing to go over the hummus. So we're making basically the standard fare of Israel Palestine, and
So you'll have some bread with that?
I've got some Norwegian matzah. And I was going to make some bread, but I don't have it with me. So I have the crackers, the traditional Norwegian crackers, which I'll be reutilizing. Unless, come to think about it, I did just pull out of the oven a more traditional Scandinavian sourdough rye bread with heavily seeded rye. Let's see, we've got sunflower, sesame, and pumpkin seed. So maybe we can use a little bit of this. Go local.
Yum.
But after the well, even before the foundation of Israel, the Zionists had a heavy focus on what is called propaganda. The term in Hebrew is hasbara, which kind of has gone out of favor, but not completely. Well, they still practice it, which is a public diplomacy technique, which links information warfare with the strategic objectives of the Israeli state. Public diplomacy is to be strategically conceived as a foreign policy priority, whereby a positive image of Israel is cultivated on the world stage, especially considering the image challenges Israel has continually faced since its creation in 1948. So it's everything from APAC to online apps. They even have created an online app that helps friends of Israel who want to promote Israel and the positive things that the Israeli state is doing. They've created a propaganda app for people to use and interact with on social media. It's a bit outrageous. Just one more thing on before I start cooking. Just wanted to mention the latest news was that Israeli forces have apparently warned Palestinians to immediately evacuate Gaza City's Al-Quds hospital. That's Jerusalem hospital in the north, close to the sea, which currently houses over 400 patients, many in the ICU, many on life support, and 12,000. In addition to that, there's 12,000 displaced civilians there. And that comes on the back of Hamas releasing 2 American hostages without any preconditions. I assume a sign of good faith or something that was arranged with the Qataris. There was one other thing in the news that struck me is Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of the UK. He made an address with Palestinian Mahmoud Abbas, where they both essentially condemned Hamas's attack in Egypt. And one of the things that Sunak's office has stressed is the quote, the imperative of avoiding regional escalation and preventing further unnecessary loss of civilian life. Now, it would seem that the very fact or nature of these visits, either him or Biden or Blinken, are doing the complete polar opposite of that. Do you not agree?
Well, it was very complex. I think the original intention, I think, of the trip was actually a good one. Not so much with the visit to Israel, but the second stop,
regional.
To the meeting in Jordan was canceled after the hospital event bombing, whatever it was, and I think that would have been much more productive relative to peace. And unfortunately, after that hospital event, with all of its attendant disinformation, has actually made not so much things worse, but there are a lot of public demonstrations in a variety of countries surrounding Israel today.
Across the world, actually. I would assume they'll continue to ramp up
too.
as well. And is there any further word on whether it's been determined whether it was a bombing or a explosion
there's
or
a lot
misfire? Too much different.
It's a lot more disinformation, including today's claim by some people that say it was a car bomb. It seems pretty clear that it was a missile, a misfire. It appears to be a misfired missile, but there's plenty of other contradictory information, all of which could be cleared up. Those people who do constant intel surveillance of could sort of reveal what actually happened. They haven't done that yet. All we have are these kind of weird, distorted images, either the current image of the parking lot itself with a very small crater compared to the usual, as it were, Israeli sort of heavy explosives that leave very large craters. It had a very small crater, and they've revised down the casualty numbers. They originally, the Hamas health folks said that there were 500 killed, and sounds a little bit more around 200 now. So I think generally, I think when these events happen, I think we all have to be a little more careful about what the front end information is. And there were a lot of people invested in disinformation at the front end. The thing that's come after that, of course, should I start yakking now? I guess I should.
I'll get to work.
All righty. Just to sort of cap that off, U.S. President Biden did go to Israel. The usual, upon his return, he made a very quick return because of the failure to get that second meeting. And I think what the front end of this was, of course, I think what the State Department always tries to do, and that is to try and make it more humanitarian and to expedite the transfer of supplies into Gaza, which has still not happened. And there are trucks backed up on the Egyptian entrance to Gaza that have not yet been released into into Gaza. And the usual disinformation applies. The Israelis are concerned that supplies will go to the wrong people or to Hamas or something, and that guns are being toted in there, which, well, it could be, but highly unlikely. And people are supplies are short, and a lot of health-related supplies are necessary, considering the continuing bombardment, Israeli bombardment and Hamas bombardment. There were some bombardment which has generally been sporadic from Syria and Lebanon, but we don't quite know where that's going yet. The Biden speech tried to link, and it was sort of an obtuse way to get to an axis of evil, but it is clear that the Russians the Russians do the banking for Hamas, if nothing else. And of course, the Russians use Iranian drones, and Iranian drones were launched at U.S. bases in Iraq and I think Syria. A set of cruise missiles launched from Yemen were shot down by a U.S. naval ship. So there are small things happening that are quite, sort of odd. Everyone trying to get their.
I didn't see it widely reported, but also Israel bombarded the Aleppo and Damascus airport.
Yes, that's quite true. They did that as well.
Remarkable.
It generally it's still a war, and there have been demonstrations around the world. In the U.S., there were some fairly major demonstrations where people were arrested for sitting in the Capitol building and or the office building, I think, next to the Capitol. And anyway, there were, I think several hundred people arrested in D.C. Related to trying to call for a ceasefire. And there are a variety of other folks making those same kind of demonstrations and demands. And that's kind of where it is right now. The two people who were two Americans, a mother and her daughter, were released with no conditions to the Red Cross. They managed to get into Israel. They were released into Israel, and they're presently having their medical condition assessed. And there's been some contact with them, and things seem to be okay. And that was one good thing that happened today. But apparently there's something like 200 hostages still in Hamas's hands. And there's a variety of informational issues, of course, in whose hands are all these hostages and the range of hostages. The list hasn't been quite as clear, I think, in terms of who's been announcing it. But of course, this is a sort of an intel nightmare, considering all of the different elements at work. So that's kind of where we are. I've been occasionally putting up the Institute for the Study of War and Critical Threats has been doing mapping of Israel and Gaza, the West Bank, and showing where attacks have been occurring. So there is a couple of days lag, but there are maps of some of the areas. None of them are up to date in that sense, and they suffer from the usual kinds of disinformation being spread by all kinds of folks. So whenever one has to sort of see those in context, that it is unfortunate that we're not getting a full kind of intel briefings. And the U.S., of course, has been a little bit cagey about trying to admit what information there is, and one hopes that other entities like the French, for example, or the British will provide better information in the coming days. So anyway, that's enough.
A little bit little information from me at the moment. I'm getting the chickpeas ready to go in the pressure cooker. But before I do that, these have been soaked overnight, and they have a thick skin on the outside. So in order to help break that down, we're gonna put some bicarbonate soda
Yes.
in the beans with a little bit of water. We're gonna cook them for a little bit just to disintegrate the skins. Rinse it, and then we'll start to cook them under pressure. The tip to get your smooth creamy hummus.
Yes, that bicarbonate procedure is really important to get that hull off. So do you rinse them after you do the quick boil of them? You run them under
Yeah,
water?
so yeah, otherwise you'll get the off taste of the bicarbonate, and it'll wash away the skins basically, or the majority of them.
Very important tip. Well, let me begin with my yammering about Ukraine. Tried doing that for 15 minutes or so. Let me be hopefully a little clearer about that. I will try and let's see, provide a little bit of visuals for you. I'm working on this. This is a work in progress, needless to say. On day, there have been milestones. The 600th day of the invasion of Ukraine has passed. That was Monday, and an interesting day. Writers decided to publish a series of photos. It's worth your while to look at them. Some are a little grisly, but I think they do represent the kind of scope of human toll on Ukraine during this period. The one I chose to use, though, is of a woman who is she was formerly a member of parliament. She's also a reservist. Several reports were done with her at the beginning of the invasion. This is a photograph from March. What was interesting was that she had an electric vehicle, a small subcompact, and carried anti-tank weapons with it. She was in charge of a small, she's a junior rank. She holds the rank of junior lieutenant and has a small squad to fire anti-tank weapons. And so she have her little car, her little electric car, which is very quiet, of course. And it's a regular automobile, so it didn't sort of trigger a lot of attention. So remember, this is in the second month of the war in 22. And she managed to knock out a couple of vehicles with these anti-tank weapons. I think these are either Polish or Swedish anti-tank weapons. Anyway, that was just sort of interesting that, she has actually a very interesting background. Tatiana Chornoval, and fortunately, she's still alive and kicking, and working with her with defense of the defense of the nation. So that was the sort of beginning of the 600th day. The issues are still pretty much there. There's a pincer movement around Avdiivka, which the Russians has spent a lot of time and a lot of resources trying to encircle this particular area, and have failed pretty much most of the time, but they have been creating a lot of losses. Probably double the normal losses have occurred during this particular assault on this particular area. It's near a road junction. It is important from a morale point of view, and that's kind of why it's been continually under attack. Ukrainians have done a pretty good job of driving them back, but the Russians, I think, because this is the area where they had formerly had Wagner in charge of prisoners who had been recruited from prison, to serve as the front line. Former prisoners are still now being utilized in fairly large assaults here, and so that's why the casualty rates are quite high here. So similarly, that's what's happening in this particular area. So that's what's happening from the first sort of days of the beginning, the 600th day. Where they've been sending them is to assault this slag pile. And it's kind of, you may not be able to see the scale, but it is a pretty big slag pile. It's a slag heap. That is all the spoils from mining. I think coal mining are just sort of dumped in this large mountain-like structure. And for some reason, I guess have prominent coverage from an artillery point of view. But I don't think it's that well defended in that particular context. But for some reason, the Russians have sent a lot of troops at this thing. And, you know, the Ukrainians have been defending it in interesting ways, mainly with small arms and not with artillery. The artillery is much farther back, as I understand it. So that's what's been going on. Parallel to this is the shooting down of at least 3 this week, the Su-25 tactical jets. They're the equivalent of the US A-10. They're fairly well armored, slightly slow, and are heavily armed. But I think techniques have been developed to use some kinds of either manpad or other kinds of shoulder-fired weapons to take out these particular jets. They're, as I said, it's a kind of tactical staple for ground support. And a new front has opened. The Advika front is in the east, in Donetsk, and this is to the west along the Dnieper River. Remember that the Russians blew a dam up and sent a lot of water down into the Black Sea. What it did, though, also was sort of change the landscape down there. It's marshland primarily, and apparently several platoons or companies of Ukrainian soldiers across this area. There was, prior to this, some skirmishes along the main bridge at Antonivka, and it's unclear who actually controls that bridge. It's pretty clear that it's always under kind of attack, or that generally this area is not as heavily not so much fortified, but there aren't that many combat engagements in the area. But for some reason, there has been a movement by the Ukrainians to intervene, and they took 2 small villages, or they seem to have taken 2 small villages. The Russians are kind of befuddled because they don't quite know whether this is a full-scale front, a kind of heavy-duty operation in here, but that's kind of what's going on. This is kind of a flanking maneuver on Melitopol, which is on the main road to Crimea. So there's still, the counteroffensive still continues. It just hasn't been as massive as probably one could hope or expect to, because of the usual things, minefields and a variety of resistance on the part of the Russians. Several people online have provided a lot of interesting mapping of this. This one is from Chuck Farrer, Pfarrer. And this is from yesterday and today. There's a variety of, well, actually a couple days ago, the same offensive continues, where you have a couple of small villages. There are a couple thousand in each village, but there seems to be a regular crossing. There's a parallel pontoon bridge that is, I think, still there. It hasn't been knocked out by the Russians. And so there are Ukrainian troops on the what is called, I think, the left side of the river, because it's flowing down, and so it'd be on a compass, the south side of the Dnieper River. The other point from the Biden national talk at 8 o'clock the other evening was, of course, to connect aid to Ukraine and to Israel. And it's obviously has domestic implications because of tying Israeli aid and Ukrainian aid together to sort of counteract the possibility of the GOP's insistence on attempting to stop such funding. Of course, we're now in the state where the GOP doesn't know who they're going to try to get as speaker, having failed for the third time to try to elect someone. And apparently, and we don't know if this is forever, but Jim Jordan has given up his attempt to become speaker, leaving what at the current moment seems to be at least 10 members of the GOP who are interested in running for the seat. There's going to be a meeting sometime this weekend, I think. Any vote
Was this
take
the
place
third
on
vote?
Monday. This is vote number. This is vote number 3.
For him, just for him, or
on Jim
altogether?
Jordan? No, he lost in a secret ballot in committee by a vote of 112 to 85, I think, or 86. It was pretty decisive. In other words, they were by the time they got to the third internal GOP vote, he'd been losing. He'd just been losing people, and it's probably testimony to how abrasive he is.
He sounds almost as unpopular as Ted Cruz.
Oh, almost. Only almost. Him and Rand Paul are just unpleasant people, I think, in real life. So anyway, there still is no release of funds. Things have already been allocated and things are moving anyway. So it's not like the Ukrainians are running out of bullets or anything. Although they did, there was a little piece that obviously is a mainstream media thing, or Israeli driven, in fact, that the Israelis got some 155 millimeter, I think 155 or 152 millimeter artillery shells, some amount. They didn't say exactly how many were diverted, originally intended to go to Ukraine, have been diverted to Israel. So whatever that means, that it's not like anyone is really running out of stuff. Harsh, did you have a question?
Yeah, Professor Ann. I think I was looking at the news yesterday or day before, I forgot. But are they now trying to go to Crimea now? Like Ukraine?
To Crimea?
Yeah.
Not quite yet, but they've been what they've been doing is putting in special ops. There've been commandos or whatever. They've been doing little assaults on the shores. Last week they had several drone attacks, and they've been running both air drones and sea drones. And they did enough of it so that because I think they damaged or sank another ship, and so the Russians have withdrawn some of their ships because they're just too vulnerable there. On the other side, the Kerch Bridge is now been repaired, so all 4 lanes, I think, are running. But other things that have happened, the Russians have lost air defense, a lot of air defense on Crimea. This is kind of shaping the battlefield, but there's no direct assault on Crimea yet. I mean, they probably together 50 kilometers into Kherson to even think about attacking Crimea. And unfortunately, I think it's very unclear. They're not really truly prepared for a full amphibious invasion of Crimea, and So I think any assault is actually going to have to be a land assault across from the Melitopol direction across Kherson somewhere. It seems fairly obvious that's going to happen, and the Russians aren't since they pierced the second line of defense. Well, it's unclear how far they've gotten. Let's just put it that way. But Crimea is still under attack. Let's say they have, you know, aerial alerts probably every day, and we're past the vacation season. So, you know, I think there'll be not as much in terms of civilian casualties. I think, you know, all the Russians who went there for vacation are probably gone back home. That's a long answer for Crimea, but that's kind of where it is right now.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out if this was just to weaken the defenses, or do they want to like do something about it?
Well, they had a major drone assault last week of probably the biggest drone assault on Crimea. They launched about 75 missiles of one kind or another on Crimea, and you know, it's very specific and very targeted towards naval assets. And as I said, the air defenses, there's a body of S-400 air defenses on the eastern side of Crimea that are pretty major coverage things. Everything is about technology. It's about whether the U.S. has allocated some, and it's not very many, as far as I can tell, of what are called ATACM missile systems, which are fairly long range, and they could be launched from the same HIMARS launchers. So I think there'll still be more precision assaults. There's just a variety of missiles that they're using to attack Crimea, some of which are, you know, sort of low-end drones, and some with precision attacks. But, you know, it's hard to tell what's going on, because there's kind of gaps in reporting. We don't quite know what's getting hit. They're still shaping the terrain in the sense that the Ukrainians mainly attack ammo and munitions facilities, or these air defense batteries. So that's kind of what some people don't like hearing all this detail, but the Ukrainians are really good at what they do. They just I think they just need more resources, like a decent air support.
So is US helping Ukraine
Oh
out,
yes, that's what
providing these information? Oh, okay.
That's what I'm going to get to right now. In Biden's talk, there's a package being proposed of $100 billion for Ukraine and Israeli aid. And the point I made in the thing that I put up yesterday, and this is, you know, you could say that this is Ukrainian propaganda, because it is put out by the media company that actually Zelensky actually owns a share of it. It's their kind of front end media company. 60% of all aid from the U.S. to Ukraine stays in the U.S. In other words, we're not sending them stuff, directly. In fact, what we're doing is just manufacturing more stuff to be sent to them. So it's essentially a fiscal part of American fiscal policy, or as some people might refer to it, as a kind of military Keynesianism. It's good for our military industrial complex. It's government money. It's our tax dollars eventually. But, Republican complaints about sending all this money to Ukraine is not quite true. And, sort of, if you look at it, last week was the first time that, there were graphs that sort of showed charts showing that the EU collectively is now spending more defense money or military money than the US is in Ukraine. So that's an interesting thing as well. Nobody's paying that much attention to it, but they really should. The claim was that this is a deflection point or inflection point. The issue, of course, is that it's largely a logistics war. that it's about equipment, either the failure to deliver it or to distribute it, and the ability to withstand pretty much daily airstrikes. The southeastern part of Ukraine is under daily air alert. There's air alerts every day. This includes, all kinds of places like Crimea, etc. But fortunately, attacks from the Ukrainians are having some results. This is a satellite photo of the Luhansk I think municipal or city airport, where the Ukrainians managed to hit 5 helicopters. So that's a fair amount, and this is a fair amount behind the lines. So precision munitions are having an effect. Also, I think there's a lot more partisan behavior, that is partisan attacks of resistance behind the lines that's also being activated. But as you can see from this particular map, there's stuff going on every day, pretty much along a very long line. It's about a 600-mile front, as we've referred to it. So without getting into too much detail, that's generally what has happened with this. Joe, how are we doing?
Yeah, we're doing well. I just diced up the cucumbers, salted them. So we're going to draw out some of the liquid. They'll remain crunchy. Chopping up scallion, coriander or some cilantro, and parsley and tomato. I've toasted the pine nuts and with cumin, whole cumin, which will go into the dressing, the kind of pickle dressing I'll be making to go over the hummus.
Yum.
And hummus is in under pressure. So they should be done shortly.
Yum.
All good.
I'm hungry again.
Professor, where is China in all of this?
China has been meeting with, in fact, Putin, I think, met with Xi recently. China is clearly a partner in all this, but they've been pretty cagey about it relative to transferring, at least publicly, transferring munitions to Russia. So that's been an issue. In another context, of course, the North Koreans have been transferring a lot of mainly artillery shells to and they've been probably manufacturing a bunch and probably have enough stored to give up to, because the Russians and the North Koreans generally use a similar kind of artillery.
And China can also give it via North Korea, right?
Yes.
And Iran, is it neutral or?
No. Well, no. Iran is supplying, in fact, built a factory for drones in Russia. So Iranian drones, in fact, they've updated their drones from propeller drones to a couple of large scale. I think they're using some sort of fan jet on their much larger drones. So the technology for Iranian drones is unfortunately improving. And as I said, the Iranians did fire a couple of them at a U.S. Military base in Iraq yesterday or day before yesterday. No one got hurt. Well, not no one got hurt. Somebody died of a heart attack, I think, from the stress, but that was the only casualty, I think. So Professor John. John?
Hi, Professor Ann. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I'm
all
looking
right.
forward to Twilight Zone.
Yes. Yes.
9:30.
9:30 Eastern time tonight. Absolutely. I was hoping you'd speculate. Do you think that it's more likely that World War III will start in Ukraine or in the Middle East?
China.
And same
I think
question
more
with
likely
the
in
nuclear
China.
war.
That's a continuing question, and I don't think they're ready to do it quite yet. I would assert that everyone is so weird about, well, you know, the Israelis don't admit that they have any nuclear weapons, so that kind of tells you something. The other thing is that we really don't know what the state of the Iranian nuclear program is. I mean, we really don't. And it's you know, pretty unclear how you know, what some people have actually claimed that World War III has already started, and this is sort of just the rolling beginning of it. So I don't know. The estimation of world war is always a problematic element, considering that World War II, as a global war, did involve a lot of places, but there are a tremendous amount of places where there was no World War II. You know, that's just me. I know that a World War III would could conceivably end all life on the planet. So that's the other thing you got to worry about.
If I may interject, John, what makes you think World War II ever ended?
I
We
was being
we look at
overly
the players
optimistic.
and the,
You can make an argument that World War II is still going on if you believe in a certain.
and
Germany lost,
So-
the Nazis won.
so by extension, that means World War One, the Great War, is still.
Well,
Oh.
did you see that
Okay.
episode of the $6 Million Man where the Japanese soldier is on the island and he's still fighting World War II?
Got to play that sound effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, it is kind of like the Twilight Zone these days. It's an interesting day today, big day today. I think we're less worried about World War III and probably just simply worried about whether America's going to be around in a couple months. But I think we're actually in a good place now. There were two people who copped plea deals with the Georgia Department of Justice. Kenneth Cheesebro or Chesbro, Cheesebro, copped a plea and to one count and a one count felony. Had a fine of $10,000, I think, and 200 hours of community service, I think, also added. And he had to write a letter of apology, just like Sidney Powell has to write a letter of apology to the people of Georgia, and she copped a plea as well. Hers, I think, was a misdemeanor, and with a 6-year probation period. Chesbro's is a 3-year probation period, as I recall. Don't have all that information in front of me, but I think it's this is actually important, considering that in one case the person is just wacky, but probably has a point of view on that very strange meeting in December, where you know, people were yelling at each other and fists nearly flew in the outer Oval Office. Kenneth Cheesebro, for those who aren't paying attention to the sedition and insurrection of January 6th, is the guy who did a lot of the logistical work to try and coordinate the fake elector schemes in multiple states. More in this particular case, in Georgia, it's a RICO prosecution, and the fact that both he and Sidney Powell tried to have a quicker move the trial dates up early and essentially negotiated plea deals, and Cheesebros was he had turned it down before about a month ago, and for some reason, probably because the pressure's on, and probably there's some hint that even the district attorney in Fulton County has enough evidence to move pretty swiftly on prosecution. because it all pivots on communications done by both of these parties with the other conspirators in this RICO prosecution. The bigger deal is, of course, that the feds will be able to access the same kind of information and negotiate other deals relative to the prosecution in the District of Columbia on the insurrection charge, which I think we're gonna. I'm going to write something later tonight. I just started it on the advice of counsel defense that Trump originally, I think, is when the trial begins next year to on an advice of counsel defense. In other words, he's going to blame his lawyers that he didn't have anything to do it. His lawyers made him do it, and the fact that both of these people, Powell and Cheesebro, have copped a plea, puts a big hole in that kind of defense relative to blaming the lawyers for his culpability. So I think this is going to be an interesting, we're in an interesting place. So all he has now is insults of people and trying to taint jury pool and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what's going on now in that case. The other thing that I'm coming out with in about half an hour is over in Coast is apparently the people at the Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's little propaganda outlet, are also Ben Shapiro thinks of himself as a kind of movie mogul, and been producing animated short cartoon things for children that are, of course, not violent and something that are that conservative children might perhaps find appealing. And in that same light, apparently. It hasn't yet been released, but Ben Shapiro has supported a live-action Snow White, a version of Snow White. It's supposed to be anti-woke, and it has other kinds of elements in it that, of course, the right wing are making fun of Ben Shapiro for all the reasons that people make fun of Ben Shapiro. But I think the bigger deal is, and the point I wanted to make was that it's more of this kind of weird revisionist criticism that the new Disney version of Snow White is supposedly, because there is a woman who is half Colombian, that Snow White is not white enough. So that's why Ben Shapiro is producing this live action Snow White to counteract that, to match the necessary fairy tale of whiteness. The other problem, of course, is that there aren't enough dwarfs, I think, in the in this Disney version. There's only one. There's one little person, and for some reason, I'm not quite sure what that is. I haven't seen anything other than the trailer stuff for it, so I'm not quite sure why there's all this stuff in there. But you can imagine the kind of right-wing jokes they have about Ben Shapiro being diminutive, as well as being a little bit nuts. But I make the comparison of Shapiro and Steve Bannon to the idea that it is very interesting that a variety of folks, Donald Trump notwithstanding, have all this image of themselves as media moguls. So they've been producing these kinds of things. Steve Bannon, is really into trying to do this sort of stuff with, full-length movie stuff that he tried to do and things. When he originally tried to do it with Sarah Palin, until she, that whole thing faltered. And so Trump was the next person that Bannon decided to seize upon relative to building a media empire. Bannon continues to do that with this other little association with the Chinese mogul who got arrested, Guo, Miles Guo, and who owns a television network or a media company in China, and is trying to create a fictive but viable. It's hard to be fictive and viable, but that's what they're doing, is to make a fantasy version, I would assert, because it's not located anywhere, of the Republic of a new conservative or quasi-democratic. It's really not democratic. I think it would be a right-wing version of the Republic of China. So some people are just, they just need to conquer the world. So that's kind of where that is. So Ben Shapiro thinks that Snow White is not white enough, and I show here an image of the original Snow White from 1937. A little picture of a fantasy picture of Ben Shapiro as the prince. An image of Snow White and Rose Red. They always forget, they leave out Rose Red when they talk about Snow White. And I included some other videos of how to do caramel apples, not poisoned apples, but caramel apples. And so that's my little thing over there. The other comment I was going to make was that the protest resembles the Ben Shapiro little story here, resembles the kind of incel resistance, and Ben Shapiro himself weighed in on defending Jordan Peterson, for example, on incel issues. And I think Olivia Wilde was critiquing Jordan Peterson on, how he was the king of the incels or something. So all of these things are integrated. I just included it because I do this little thing over at Daily Kos every 2 weeks on the Friday, where we sort of pretend we're at a kitchen table and we're sort of talking to each other. How are things going, Joe?
Oh, I'm going to be a little noisy here. Just the pressure cooker is finished. So this is called a quick release. Pressure will go down quickly by running cold water over it. Make sure you tilt it forward so that the hot water doesn't blast your fingers. Then you'll hear the release. And then you're all safe and back over here. Well, it's safe to remove, unlock, rotate. Finished beans.
Yum.
So we got the cucumber tomato salad or farmer salad. Toasted seeds and cumin seeds and pignolias. Put them in with pickled chilies and pickles. We're going to put that on top. Need a little olive oil.
Nice. With the chickpeas, would another way to deal with that rather than using a potato masher would be to use a stick blender on that?
Yeah, you could do it. You could do it that way.
Okay.
So blender on a stick.
Yes.
I have one of those. They're very practical. I would recommend those. But this one, trusty old bean masher will do. Yeah, so one of the things with the hummus masbaha is that you have a base of tahini sauce, and I've put garlic, salt, lemon, cilantro, or coriander. And unlike regular hummus, which is cold, this one we use the freshly cooked, still warm hummus And it has almost the John, cover your ears, egg salad like flavoring.
I will say that I did discover some in my local supermarket, some plant-based cheese the other day, and it was quite good.
Mm.
It's the same people who do those wax-coated cute little cheeses, Edam type cheeses. But they make a plant cheese, and I found it quite good, tasty.
Laughing
Yeah,
cow.
Yes.
Nice. I just want to say, Ben Shapiro here. I just want to comment on what you were saying. The name is Snow White. It's not Snow Brown. It's not Snow Yellow. It's not Snow Orange. It is Snow White. I don't understand why this is so complicated for you people, but it is Snow White.
You weren't happy. You weren't happy enough dissing Barbie. Had to go to Snow White as well.
It was bad enough when they changed the color of the Little Mermaid. As we all know, mermaids live under the sea. There's not much light down there, so of course they're going to be pale and white too, or maybe even translucent. They're not going to be brown.
Ben, can I just say that you have a hell of a sexy voice?
I don't know how to take that, but that makes me a little uncomfortable. But I'll take it as a compliment.
God. Oh man.
And we need to go with this nice traditional Middle Eastern dish. We will need some complemented with some Scandinavian bread.
Yum, yum, yum. I'm hungry again. I've discovered that there are probably economic reasons for doing one's own hummus as well. From a unit cost point of view, hummus is actually pretty pricey these days.
Considering how quick and easy it is to make, if you're not going to make hummus, if you're not going to use the pressure cooker, if you're not going to cook beans for hours or 20 minutes in the pressure cooker, then a can of chickpeas that are cooked can be whipped up in no time with a stick blender on a stick and a jar of tahini. I think the major cost in hummus is the tahini. So
Yes.
the sesame butter is extremely expensive. So that's your main hit. And if you buy it separately, it's much more affordable than pre-made. They're really nailing you on that pre-made hummus.
Yeah, the pre-made hummus in my area is something like
Not very good.
$6 to $7 a pound. Whereas a can of chickpeas is still under $1.
Good deal.
$6 or $7 a pound. You can need to stop shopping at Whole Foods.
Whole paycheck.
Yeah.
No. That's at my normal supermarket with where I try and buy my hummus cheap on sale.
Oh.
God, I haven't been in Whole Foods I think I got a cup of coffee in Whole Foods about 2 years ago.
Leave it with your last paycheck.
Indeed. It's just next to my doctor's office, so it just I just needed a cup of coffee.
And that was $14.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Well, just to review, we've got the salat Arabi, as the Israelis call it, Arab salad, or salat aliya, farmer salad, or cucumber tomato salad. Cucumbers, tomato, scallion, salt, pepper, super simple, olive oil, lemon. And then I made lumpy hummus, masbaha, where you're tossing freshly cooked, still warm chickpeas in a tahini sauce with pickled dressing, toasted cumin, and pine nuts, pickles, and pickled chili. And then we
Nice.
garnish with a lot of parsley or cilantro.
Nice.
And my homemade sourdough rye bread. See,
Oh, I'm hungry again. Need something to munch while watching Twilight Zone at 9:30, and then we have Bring Your Own readable stories after that. And Venture Brothers is back this evening with the safety meeting at midnight.
tomorrow morning, I will be going for a hike out in the freezing cold. So if anybody would like to join me, probably be around 7 in the morning, or maybe right after the Venture Brothers. We'll see. Depends on how we feel.
Oh, that's pretty early. Pretty early in the
Mm.
morning. The weekend includes a writing workshop at 2 on Saturday. 6 o'clock is I think is dis and dat, but if
Yep.
I don't know if Valley Vox is on, but if
No.
Valley Vox is not on,
Valley Vox will be next week, coming
Oh,
back
okay.
for pre-Halloween.
okay. So yes,
And,
at I think 6 o'clock I'll be doing dis and dat. I'm not sure what comes after that on Saturday. On Sunday, will be 3
Hammer and
p.m.
sickle or farming.
Hammer and Sickle at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right after that is Weekly Marks, where we're beginning the 1844 economic and philosophical manuscripts by Marx. And at 5 o'clock, Columbo. So a busy weekend, as we wait for whoever is going to be the new Speaker of the House. Thank God it's not Jim Jordan.
Who all is up next? Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take
Thanks.
care, all.
Bye, everyone.
Mm-hmm.